Welcome to the DWI Guide podcast, where defenders of the Constitution assemble to prepare for courtroom battle and firm owners gather to develop marketing strategies that will revolutionize the practice of criminal defense. Here's your host, the DWI guy, Jake Minnick.
Hello, fellow freedom fighters, and welcome to episode 100 of the DWI Guy podcast. 100. We've made it to 100. Very excited about that. Appreciate everybody who has listened to this podcast, the people that have reached out and let me know feedback on the podcast. Let me know that you're listening. It has been an amazing experience to do this podcast week after week. I have learned a ton doing this podcast, so it has been personally beneficial, regardless of whether anybody was listening the entire time or not. I learned a ton from my guests that I've had on the podcast. I've learned a ton in doing the preparation and study to get ready for these podcasts. So it's been extremely beneficial, but I've also gotten some very kind feedback from those of you listening about the podcast and the impact that it's had on your court practice, wins that have come in the courtroom from this podcast. And so I am fired up to keep this thing going. We have been talking about, over the last 10 episodes, the DWI Masters series that we've been doing. Talked to a few of the North Carolina DWI Masters in those early episodes of this series. And then over the last 4 have looked at some of the character traits that the DWI Masters have. We've got a few more DWI Masters coming up during the next few episodes. So get ready to have some more amazing attorneys come on and share their experience, their knowledge, how they've built their practice. Get ready, because it's going to be an exciting post-100 few episodes here coming up. But today, I have a very special introduction to make. I have the next DWI Master that I want to introduce you to. We've got the next bigwig, the next person that is going to make a mark when it comes to district court representation in North Carolina of DWI cases. So I need a drum roll. And the next DWI Master is you. The next DWI Master in this state is you. So pat yourself on the back, congratulate yourself. If you're not driving, pop open a bottle of champagne, maybe pour a whiskey glass for yourself, a good scotch. If you, again, don't be behind the wheel, but celebrate, because you are the next DWI Master. And I am going to talk today. I'm going to give some just practical tips about becoming a DWI Master. I'm going to give 8 tips on how to become the next DWI Master. When before the 4-minute mile had been broken, before the 4-minute barrier running a mile had been set, it was many thought a impossible barrier to break. They thought that the human body could not go that fast, that it would be an impossibility for somebody to break that barrier. That was a true impossibility for man to move past that 4-minute mile. And so when Roger Bannister did that in 1954, he shattered the ceiling. He broke the barrier that seemed like an impossible barrier to break. And whenever somebody else breaks the barrier and sets the new standard, now everybody else has an easier time to follow suit. Since 1954, over 1,700 track and field athletes have broken that barrier. 1,700 in less than 70 years have broken that barrier. Anytime you see somebody set that barrier, anytime you see what it means for the best to be on display, the bar is raised. But beyond the bar getting raised, everybody else wants to compete for that bar. Everybody else has an easier time following in the footsteps of that pioneer, that first person to make it happen. And so the benefit, let me tell you the benefit that you have as the next DWI master. It's going to be easier for you than the masters that have come before. It's going to be easier for you to become a master than those masters that we've already spoken with in this series and the ones that we're going to talk to coming up. You have the mold. You have the program for becoming a master. So it's going to be an easier track. If you are passionate, like we talked about in last week's episode about becoming a master, you will become one. You will become one. You can visualize what it looks like to be a master. So we're going to talk about 8 steps today, 8 practical steps for becoming a master. And that is going to be, again, very, very easy to implement steps. We're going to talk about study, observe, network, mentor, experiment, humanize, reflect, and listen. So those are the main points that we're going to be talking through here on episode 100. So here is step number 1, study. You have to set aside time to learn DWI law. We talked on back a few episodes back about the importance of education as a character trait of a DWI master. So you have to study. And the practical tip I give here is spend 2 hours a week in studying DWI case law, DWI issues, the NHTSA manuals. Set aside 2 hours a week, block it off on your schedule so that you can grow in DWI knowledge. That is 50 hours. If you did it 1 hour a week, it's 50 hours a year. If you're doing it 2 hours a week, it's over 100 hours a year that you are spending studying DWI specific issues. Just recently read James Clear's Atomic Habits. I actually finished that book this morning. Amazing book. If you have not read that, go get a copy because it is a really powerful book when it comes to changing habits. But one thing that he stresses in that book is that if you get 1% better every day over the course of a year, you will get 37 times better. 37 times better. If you get 1% worse every day, then over the course of 365 days, you are going to be less than 1% of what you started out at. Less than 1% of what you started out at. That is a humongous difference. That is a humongous difference. All you have to do is take small steps every day to improve. So set aside that 2 hours of time. Set aside that time so that you can build for the long haul the knowledge that you're going to need to become a master. So that's study. Point number 2, observe. Napoleon Hill once said, watch the one ahead of you and you'll learn why he is ahead. Then emulate him. Watch the one ahead of you and learn why he is ahead. Then emulate him. If you watch one DWI trial a month, by one of the local masters that is undoubtedly in a county either that you practice in or next door. All across the state, we have DWI Masters. If you watch one trial a month, 12 trials a year, you are going to soak in so much information. You're going to soak in so many trial strategies. And the beauty of this is not only do you get to see the law in practice, but you also get to see how it works locally. There are certain arguments on the DWI front that work in one part of the state and do not at all in another. So not only do you get to hear these arguments actually carried out into the courtroom, hear what you've been studying for that 100 hours a year in your office, carried out in the courtroom as you're watching these masters try cases, but you get to see how they do it specific to local practice. You get to look at local custom as they're carrying these arguments out in the courtroom. It is a massive advantage, massive advantage. Albert Einstein on this same point said, watch the stars and from them learn. And I expect that he was talking about the stars in the sky, but it equally applies to the stars that are in the courtroom. If you watch the stars, you are absolutely going to learn. No question. Even better, if before you watch one of these 12 trials a year, if before you watch a trial that is being handled by a DWI master, ask them for a forecast of what is going to go on. When you're at calendar call and you see the masters sitting in the courtroom, everybody knows who these people are. When you see one of the masters in the courtroom, go up to them and say, hey, you got anything interesting going on today? You have anything that that would be cool to watch? Got anything for trial? And then if they say yes, before you leave that courtroom, try to get a sense of when that's going to happen. Don't handle your 3 speeding tickets and walk out the door to move on to the next thing. You are missing out on a tremendous education if you are not watching the masters in practice. Take full advantage. So observe. Next, network. This is a powerful quote from Jim Rohn. Powerful quote. You probably already heard it, actually. So this is one that we've all heard in some sense or another, but it's super powerful. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Scary? Yes, it is. True? Yes, it is. If you're spending time with the masters in this field, if you're spending time with other young guns who are interested in practicing criminal defense, getting after DWI trials, it's going to elevate your game. There's just no question about that. And so I am going to specifically suggest as a practical tip for becoming a DWI master that you attend CLEs. And I'm going to say specifically, as of right now, the North Carolina Advocates for Justice CLEs on DWI, because it's more than just the material that is presented, which is amazing. NCAJ does such a good job. Chaz Post over the last few years has crushed it on this front, putting out incredible CLE opportunities when it comes to learning DWI. But as important as what you're learning on the day of the CLE is networking with other DWI practitioners, meeting, mingling with, getting contact info, following up with other DWI practitioners. It is so important to have that support and network. It's so important. We have since March of 2020 been in a virtual learning experience for the most part when it comes to CLEs, but we're about to get back to in-person CLEs pretty much across the board, no matter what organization that you're going to for CLE information. And when that happens, do not do the virtual option. It might be easier. It might be less time commitment. You might be able to still work from the office, which in my opinion is stupid. You should be going and being fully engaged in the CLE. So don't pretend like you can answer email, do client consultations, have people running in and out of your office all day long and still get the same amount of information as if you were sitting in person with no distractions. It's dumb. I mean, it's not going to work. So go in person for the educational part alone, but more importantly, because of the connections that you can create from those in-person events. I cannot wait to see everybody in person at the next in-person NCAJ CLE. I'm so pumped about that. And it's important for us to have that community of each other so that we can bounce ideas off of each other, so that we can figure out as a group how best to argue these type of cases. So make sure that you don't let those in-person opportunities go to the wayside. Network. Next point, number 4, get a mentor. Get a mentor. Jocko Willink. I love Jocko Willink. He's got the discipline equals freedom sign up behind me. Have it in my gym at home. Love that. Discipline equals freedom. Jocko said, when you're too embarrassed to ask for help, that's a little knock at your door saying you're insecure. When you're too embarrassed to ask for help, that's a little knock at your door saying you're insecure. Everybody should have a mentor. Everybody should have a coach. If we're trying to be a master, we've got to get a coach, right? The apprentice and the master, right? You got to have somebody that you're able to study under, learn from, follow, emulate. Got to have somebody that you can follow up on. So here's the practical point on this front. Ask to meet with 3 local attorneys for lunch and discuss with them how they market and handle DWI cases, how they market for and handle DWI cases. If you feel uncomfortable about doing this with local attorneys, if you think, man, they're not going to share their business knowledge with me, then maybe go 1 or 2 jurisdictions over. Maybe reach out to somebody that you don't, generally talk to a lot. Maybe you go to those people a couple of months before and just say, hey, I really respect the heck out of your DWI practice, and I practice over here in Buncombe County. And if you ever need a case continued over here, if you ever have something on over here that I can help with and you're busy in court, I'd love to help. So you just let me know. I'll be happy to go over and continue it for you. That way you're not having to do a cold call, get them on the phone. Hey, let's go to lunch. Reach out to them. Tell them, hey, I respect the heck out of what you do. Anytime you need me to step in, anytime you need me to do something for you, you just give me a call, shoot me a text. I'll be happy to take care of it. Really grateful for the example that you set in the local community. That's it. Follow up a couple months later. Say, hey, I was just curious if you would mind if we went out to lunch sometime. I'd love to pick your brain about the amazing practice that you built, and see if I can emulate some of what you're doing. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be insecure. It's not going to hurt to ask. The worst a person can say is, hey, I'm busy right now, right? There, very few people are just going to be like, heck no, I'm not going to talk to you, right? If they're not going to meet with you, they're just tell you they're busy, right? It's going to be pretty painless in terms of a negative response, but I bet you are likely to get a accepted invitation. We, as a firm, Minnick Law, as a firm, practices all over North Carolina. We got attorneys all over the state. Reach out to us. We'd love to sit down and talk with you. We'd love to sit down and talk about some of our strategies and practices when it comes to marketing, when it comes to how we handle cases. We'd love to talk about that. Reach out to us. Reach out to a DWI Master that is in your area. You're going to learn a ton. So get a mentor. Number 5, experiment. Experiment. Ralph Waldo Emerson once said that all life is an experiment. The more experiments you make, the better. Totally agree. Trial and error. You got to experiment. You got to have a experimental attitude. So here's what my suggestion is on this point. Get on the court appointed list for some period of time so you can experiment with cases. This may not be true in every county. So you'll have to just check with your local public defender's office or local clerk's office to determine whether or not you can get on the appointed list and for what types of cases. But you may even be able to be selective in terms of the specific charges that you're willing to be appointed on. I've seen that in several jurisdictions. So you can go in and just say, is there any way that I could be appointed on cases only for DWI cases? There are a ton of public defender's offices and clerk's offices, jurisdictions that are hurting for court-appointed lawyers. They need more court-appointed lawyers, desperate for court-appointed lawyers, or for court-appointed cases. If you go in and ask, is there any way that I could be appointed on DWIs? I'm really interested in this particular area. I don't have, maybe depending on your own circumstance, maybe you have all the time in the world to do anything under the sun that the court, public defender's office is throwing your way. But if you wanted to just reach out and say, hey, if you got any DWI cases that you need a court-appointed lawyer on, I'd love to step in. Every office is going to be slightly different in terms of how they assign cases and whether or not they might buy into that. But that can be a really powerful way to grow your knowledge of DWI through firsthand representation. And it gives you such a better opportunity to try new things. When money is not an issue for the person that you represent, all you have to worry about is whether or not there's any issues for trial. You can talk to the DA. Things can get continued, at will. There's once that monetary element is taken away, it just relieves a lot of the pressure that you feel sometimes in a privately retained case. So get on the court appointed list and go to bat for the clients that you represent. Go to bat for the cases that you get assigned. Take them to trial. Try those cases. Try issues. Push hard on those court-appointed cases. Experiment. Number 6, humanize. Humanize. When you're speaking to a client that is charged with DWI on that initial consultation, on that initial phone call that comes in, do everything in your power to humanize that person. Think about what they might look like. Try to get some information in terms of what they do, what their family life looks like. Do everything in your power to humanize that person, because you will go so much harder for a human being than you will for a file. And if you can figure out a way to regularly remind yourself that you are working for human beings, that you are working for people, you will go to bat for that person in a different way. And so that's the practical tip, is find ways that you can connect better, learn a little bit more, humanize your client. Number 7, reflect. Reflect. This is a really easy and really powerful point right here. After every trial that you have, ask the judge, the DA, and any other attorney that's in the courtroom that happens to be watching your trial. Maybe they're waiting for their own case to be tried. Maybe in some jurisdictions, they basically just call a trial early in the morning to get their trooper out there. There might be 3 or 4 attorneys sitting and watching. Ask the judge, the DA, and any other attorney in the courtroom how you could have improved your case, how you could have done better. Ask them what you thought, what they thought about it. Judge, what was the reason that you decided to deny probable cause? What could I have done better on this particular case? Did I leave anything? Did I not ask something? Ask the DA. The DA is going to be shocked by this. The DA is going to be absolutely shocked by the fact that you want their feedback in getting more skilled. It's going to really, I think, it's a humble position to put yourself in. And when somebody asks that question, it really is a kind of creates a element of trust between you and whoever you're asking advice from. So I think it's honestly just good for your practice, for your future relationship with these people that you're asking their opinion on. But you also really want that feedback. You really want that person to say, well, here's a question that I would have asked this particular officer, or, you probably shouldn't have put that person on the stand. When you talk to your colleagues about it, just say, look, I really want to improve my practice. I've got thick skin, but I more importantly just want to do a better job for clients. Please tell me what I could have done better. I know I left something on the table. Tell me what it was. Give me some tips. If you will get in the habit of asking that, I have made that a habit for a long time, asking other people in the courtroom, judges, DAs, jurors, other attorneys, my colleagues. I've asked them, hey, what do you think I could have done different? What would you have argued in this particular situation? Would you have presented this piece of evidence like that? The more specific you get with these questions, the better. What you want is honest feedback. You do not want a pat on the back. You do not want somebody to say, hey, no worries. You did the best you could. Some cases just don't go your way. Push on that. If the judge says, hey, you win some of these, you lose some, just say, Judge, I know there's something I could have done better. What could I have done better? Anything. Could I wear a different color socks? I don't really care what it is. Just tell me how I could improve. Bill Gates said, we all need people who will give us feedback. That's how we improve. We all need people who will give us feedback. That's how we improve. And that's right. That's how we improve. If you want to get better, you got to ask people how you can get better. You got other people that are sitting there, not in the heat of the moment, not anxious about missing something or not objecting at the right time. These people are just sitting in the courtroom, taking it all in. Ask them what you could have done better. It's totally okay to be humble and open enough to ask for that feedback. So reflect. And finally, number 8, listen. Listen to everybody that can help you improve. I'm going to put a plug in right here. Listen to the podcast. Hey, we're 100 episodes in. If you haven't listened to them, there's a ton of great content from some of the best attorneys in the state on this podcast. Go back and soak it in. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, I've learned so much just talking with some of these guests, just preparing for these podcasts. Go back and listen to those episodes. If you've got a specific case coming up on a specific issue, there's a decent chance that we've done an episode on that. Go back while you're driving to work, back and forth. Take 20 minutes of your day, 50 minutes of your day, depending on the length of the podcast, and have a listen. Listen to your colleagues talk about these kind of things. Listen on the NCAJ listserv to the Q&A that goes back and forth about specific DWI issues. Spend that time soaking in other people's knowledge, listening to the masters. Spend that time in quiet. Don't need to be talking all the time. As lawyers, we get paid to talk, right? We get paid by the written word, by the spoken word. We're always ready, especially if you're a trial lawyer. You're always ready to entertain, always ready to be out there telling a story. If you want to be one of the masters, listen. So there are some practical tips for you to implement immediately in your practice so that you, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, wherever you're listening to this, you can become the next DWI master. There is plenty of room for more DWI masters. And it is exciting to see the amount of DWI masters that are coming up through the ranks. We have got a great future in North Carolina, in our district court lawyers that are handling cases day in, day out. We have a great future ahead of us as a defense bar if we can continue to elevate the bar, continue to grow in our knowledge, continue to push one another to better representation. I look forward to speaking with you over the next 100 episodes. If you found the information in this podcast to be valuable, I simply ask that you pay it forward and share this podcast with another member of the legal community. Also, if you would leave us a rating or a review on whatever platform you are listening on, I would greatly appreciate it.